Oh, hold on. I pushed record instead of the audio. Ugh. So, tonight's been a night. There we go. It's not a show on the Okayest network without some tech difficulties, is it?
We have some of that from time to time. And I'm in a spare bedroom today instead of like somewhere more fun. So apologies for the not as fun background tonight as usual. I could try to go find a dead thing in the house to put behind me, I guess.
Nah, the pup's solid.
Otherwise, you just get to deal with Oliver.
Yes. Welcome back to the Okayest Cook podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whonsetler, coming at you with Andy Heiser remotely. And that is because we have a super cool guest tonight. I'm super excited to talk to Mr. Alan Bergo. Did I pronounce that right? I totally forgot to ask you pre-record.
Yeah, no, you got it right.
I got you. That's how we roll here on the Okayest Network. Yeah. So welcome to the show.
Even when he does get it like said right beforehand, and then immediately butchers it as soon as you come online. So
I'm good with faces, not names. So yeah, I'll recognize your face the rest of my life, but I'm sorry, I just forgot your name 2 seconds later. So anywho, Alan, yeah, super happy to have you on the show. You got a lot going on that I'm super excited to chat about. But first, have you guys eaten anything cool recently this week? Dreamt of anything cool? Any notable meals?
Absolutely. Well, I'm right. I write for my website full time, so I'm usually working on something up until the last minute on Friday. Stuff will go out on Saturday. So I was making if you like Indian food, I'm always trying to find a way to like kind of wildify or find wild ingredients that are in traditional recipes. And one of my favorite things, I can't eat gluten, so I was at my favorite Indian place and I saw, they have this thing called missy roti. It's a little like chickpea flatbread. And that doesn't sound too interesting, but you basically take some chickpea flour, a little AP flour. You can do it all with chickpea flour or another leguminous flour, like lentil flour. A lot of those things would probably work. But the cool part is you take, before they put it in the tandoor oven or you put it under a broiler, you put like finely chopped onion or scallion or chopped like really finely diced hot spicy peppers and then aromatic seeds, and you press those into it so it gives it this cool pattern and look, and then you put it under the broiler just ripping hot so it gets all the kind of speckly brown all over it. Nice. And caramelized, and then when it comes out you kind of like quench it with a big healthy brush of garlic ghee. So take some minced garlic butter, basically.
I'm smelling it as you're saying all this.
And yeah, so then like as you're eating it, there's like whole coriander seed is really the only thing that they put on at the restaurant that I was at. So I use wild seeds, like a wild caraway that I pick, cumin, wild fennel seed, and I'll use that with the whole coriander too. The coriander is kind of key, but I mean, usually you have them with curry, but I have just been eating them just like a snack, just hot, reheat them. Nice. I've been eating them all week. Oh, they're so good. That's when I was making a cube steak from venison top round today.
Nice.
That sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I got to pulled out some backstrap, and for those of you on our network that hunt and listen to a lot of this know that like that's kind of like the cut, and it's not one that I tend to share, but it's also one that I think actually Chris, there may have been you, I think you and then another buddy gave me as like, hey, maybe you should get into hunting, and gave me a couple pieces of backstrap that kind of got me hooked. So I wanted to do some cooking here at the house for myself and the girlfriend, and pulled out some backstrap sheets. But one of the kind of fun things that I did this time around is instead of just like my normal, like usually when I'll do like salt, pepper, basic dressing up of venison there, and then I take butter, and then as it's heating up in the pan, just kind of keep throwing the butter on top. But this time I kind of wanted to play a little bit with some flavors, so I still have some truffle oil from Italy. Yeah. And so I created this, like, I went ahead and nuked some butter, melt that down, did some salt, pepper, some oregano in there, and then hit a couple of hits of the of the truffle oil into that mixture and just kind of spun up a nice little like wash essentially to like cook the steaks in and just continue to lather that. And man, oh man, it was like just enough truffle to like, it wasn't overpowering, wasn't crazy. But man, I was one of those, I was pretty impressed with myself on that one. I was like, that was a good one. So that's probably the best thing I've had in a while.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with truffle oil. I mean, I'll be totally honest here. I call it the Axe body spray of condiments, just because like I make it, but I usually make my own because it's even like a lot of the imported stuff. It's made with synthetic flavorings, and it can just be so powerful. Like I love truffle fries, on some potatoes or something, but it's popcorn. But man, it can be so potent. So you just need like a couple tiny, tiny.
And so this was a little bit done. This actually this oil from a previous show, we kind of talked about it beforehand, but it's actually I was actually at the vineyard where they actually make it. It's this little family-owned spot. They don't make enough of it to even get out of Florence. So the only way to get it is like quite literally being there. So it is like on the truffle oil scale of things, like it is, you can taste the difference, kind of to your point, right? It's not full of all that other junk. And man, oh man, you're not wrong though. It's not like it doesn't taste like Axe body spray. It's got a different profile when it's actually real, and like you make your own. So you definitely know what I'm talking about there. So that was kind of cool though. That was definitely one. But you're not wrong. If you're buying it from Kroger and it's under $20. There's probably a reason.
What's up? Have you guys used the Truff brand oil? They do like truffle hot sauce and stuff.
Solid branding, but I don't know anything about it.
So, hey, agree on the solid branding, but what that is, I mean, so is that synthetic? When I make homemade truffle oil, it doesn't last forever. Like even in the fridge, like it shouldn't. It should be like this kind of ephemeral thing, and it should not keep. If it keeps for a long time, and it's super strong, like because they're mixing it with like I would never ever in my life mix fresh truffles with anything spicy. Like that is a great way to ruin truffles. So just the fact that it's truffle hot sauce is like that's synthetic truffle right there. But I love the branding.
Yeah, it is solid branding.
I've got one in my fridge.
Hats off to marketing on that one.
Yes. Yeah. The Instagram ads got me.
How about you, Chris?
What did I do? Actually, I need to chat with Alan because you have a contact with truffles. I think you just posted it on your Instagram not too long ago, maybe a week or so ago. But that would have influenced my dish in an extremely positive way. I made pizza again. So Andy, going back to our episode with Scott and Carly ages ago, used Scott's pizza dough recipe, threw it in the oven, but I did like a white sauce as well, kind of like the half and half Parmesan, garlic, butter. Is that a bechamel sauce technically?
It depends. So bechamel it's thickened with roux. It may include, sometimes it'll have onion pureed, sometimes it'll have onion cooked and taken out. Sometimes people will like leave it in, but it's a white sauce that's thickened with roux.
I wouldn't say it's a roux. What I made, so it's bechamel-ish or bechamel adjacent.
It's okay.
It's a white sauce. It's a white sauce for pizza. I slathered that on the crust. Threw on some black garlic and some chorizo from Saraga. So like fresh, authentic, awesome chorizo. What else? Arugula and shiitake mushrooms. So like a crazy flavor bomb with just all sorts of wild stuff. But man, it hit the spots, and I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, the pizza with white sauce that was like one of my go-tos. I worked at a number of places with like wood fire pizza ovens, like a little white sauce, a little cheese, a little bit of like raw
burrata. I forgot the burrata.
Raw speck or prosciutto.
Okay.
Either at the end or before, a little bit of chili flake. Man, it's one of my favorite pizzas. And arugula.
Yes, I think I would maybe substitute the shiitake and the black garlic for truffles if I had some fresh good ones.
Yeah, so if you were gonna do that, so with truffles, what I would do, you would do a white sauce and maybe some cheese, some parm, a little mozzarella or burrata would be okay, and like nothing else, absolutely nothing.
Just that and the
else.
Truffle.
Like no arugula, no chorizo, no black garlic, like nothing but fresh truffle. It's fascinating. like truffles by themselves are super strong. I have some white Bianchetto truffles in my fridge right now.
Oh man.
And they are super strong, but when you mix them with just about anything, they become submissive. So
Okay.
I was cooking white truffles this year. I mean, those things, they were $2,800 a pound.
Hmm.
So I got a good quarter pound because I'll write about them in my third book, which is a couple years away. And I made some pasta. These stinking things were so strong. I hadn't had them in like 4 or 5 years. I put half a teaspoon in a bowl of pasta, like 2 ounces of dried pasta cooked, and it was one of the most potent truffle things I have ever
Half
eaten.
a teaspoon? Oh
Half a
jeez.
teaspoon of fresh white
That's
Alba
insane.
truffles. The next day, I made the same thing. I added broccoli, and it ruined it.
Really?
Yep. So it's like it's supreme minimalism when you are cooking with truffles. And on that note, that company that worked out so well. I really want to spread the word about truffles because they are going to be a thing. This is a completely different episode because truffle science is like advancing so quickly. We had 3 new species discovered in the last 12 months that are indigenous to North America that are commercially viable.
Oh, sick.
That we did not even know existed, right? It's like it's advancing super fast. But the company, it's called Truffle Cart. That's where I buy most of my truffles from. And they're based in California, but they will give you 25% off. They just extended it for another month. So you can go on there and you can get truffles. I mean, plan on spending at least $100, but for $100, you can get a quarter pound of some of my favorites, which are tuber bromali, which they don't taste like truffle. There's truffle a little bit. They're a weedy truffle that a lot of people don't like in Europe, but I love these things. They taste like peaty. They taste like scotch. They taste
Oh
smoky.
my gosh.
Yeah, they taste like smoky, peaty
You just
scotch.
sold me.
Yeah, and for like $100 including shipping, and cheaper with the 25% off of every single thing on their
That's
entire
insane.
site. That's like every type. So yeah, if you want some truffles, go over there. The
Have you
code
had their
is,
oil? It looks like they have truffle oil on here on the website.
I just make my own, or I'll buy fresh truffles. So I haven't tried. I don't usually buy
What's
other.
the
For
website again?
For those of us that are okay and not going to make it, I was just curious if it had your sign of approval.
Yeah,
of
I
the
don't
oil
usually
there.
buy other people's value-added products.
Right.
I'm like a DIY person.
Yeah.
But yeah, truffle carts. What is the?
And you'll find it later.
Yeah,
They'll send it
we'll
to
figure out I can't remember what the
Yeah.
promo code is.
I'm 100% buying some of those. Andy, if you want to split them, let me know.
Already
Yeah,
on
I'll
the-
be, I'll be
very
ordering.
they're super cool.
You
But yeah,
already got some in
I'll
your
find
cart?
I'll find the promo code, and you guys can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we might have to push the episode early
Yeah.
if that promo code's going to expire. But dude, so yeah, I've never tried like an authentic, real, just a hunk of a truffle. It's
Well,
all
they've got
been,
this
I
little,
guess,
like, I'm
synthetic.
sure that Alan, you probably have the like little shaver too, but like they've got the whole kit on that website too, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I do absolutely recommend. I absolutely recommend the slicer. It's also so what you get. It's not just for truffles. I use it as a garlic mandolin.
I was just gonna say, like, well, I just shared that thing about ginger too.
Yes.
Which I could use. I could see that being helpful for ginger as well.
Break down that hot tip, Andy.
Yeah,
I think the
so
reel
you probably-
expired.
You probably know this. This was just I was thumbing through Instagram and I saw the chef. Anytime I see a chef have like a hot tip, I always stop and see what's up, especially when it comes to cutting things. And basically, what he was doing is like how to like get like finely minced ginger can be, you can because chopping it really thin can be time consuming. And what he did is he basically looked like like ginger's a root, so it like wood, it's got grain, and if you cut against the grain into very very small slivers, and then basically what he did is he put on a cutting board and then put a piece of saran wrap over it, and then just took a knife, the blade of a knife, and just slapped it on the desk, on the table. And he said you have to do it with pressure. You can't just baby hit it. You have to hit it. But what it does when he pulled the thing back and scraped it over the knife, it was perfectly like little bitty shreds of it, like perfectly minced down. And he did it in like
It
obviously
wasn't minced. It was like
pulverized.
pulverized. Just
Just vaporized. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Nice hot tip, for any fresh garlic users, which is infinitely superior to any of the powdered stuff. So
Yeah, for sure.
you got to get fresh.
I mean, the powdered
Not
garlic,
garlic,
I do like, but
ginger.
oh yeah, I was gonna say garlic in a jar. Never.
We don't promote garlic here.
Garlic.
Well, speaking of things that live in the ground, you are the author of a book, and I've got it right here. I'm super excited. This is legit my first foraging book, and I've been talking to the guys for ages about just my desire to get more into it. I know ramps and morels, and that's about the limit. So
Well, that's a start.
it's a start. Yeah. So when I'm out turkey hunting, I look for ramps and morels when the turkeys are slow. But I'd love to learn more. And your book is just jam packed with all sorts of stuff. I've only briefly flipped through it so far, so I don't know. Maybe you can break down maybe a little bit about the book here. Maybe just a tick on like what region. Like, is this book designed for a specific region, or is it fairly all encompassing? And I'll let you take the floor here.
Yeah, so I'm based in the Midwest, but the beautiful thing about foraging is, so my first book, Flora, is all on plants. They're named after tasting menus I used to cook at a restaurant I was at. So it's a series. It'll be Flora, Fauna, and Fungi. And the first one is all on plants. And the beautiful thing about wild plants is that the majority of leafy greens that foragers are going to be picking are like not specific to a specific place. Like they're in North America, most of them are invasive. I mean, we have indigenous nettles here in North America, but they're a weed. They're cultivated. They've never been cultivated because they don't have to be. But people are eating them around the world. They're one of the most commonly eaten wild greens around the world. I mean, you have traditions all over, and this is a similar thing with most of the leafy greens in the book. Is that you could be, basically anywhere, and you can find plants to use. And the other thing is that my book it's a cookbook, right? So I am not as skilled as like my mentor. So if you want my mentor, Sam Thayer, as far as plants go, who I would say is arguably the greatest forager in the world. He lives in Wisconsin. So he writes field guides. So field guide's very different from a cookbook. So if I tried to write a field guide that's also a cookbook, this thing would be 1,000 pages. and
What's stopping you?
It's a publisher that's going to say that doesn't fit into a particular price point. The book would be $150, and we're never going to sell any, and then we're going to drop you and cancel your contracts.
No. Okay.
So yeah, you could cook, the vast majority of stuff. You can find substitutes for anywhere or the plant in question. All you really need is like some disturbed soil, and a lot of the plants are just really common garden weeds. There's a few things that are specific to the Midwest, like prickly ash. That can be a little tricky to find in some other places, but generally speaking, you can be anywhere. And it could also be plants from a garden. So one of the things I wanted to do with that book was make something that was, there's a lot of foraging cookbooks out there now, and what's going to happen when you open one up? You're going to have like, oh, here's a recipe for amaranth. Here is a recipe for lamb's quarters. Here is a recipe for nettles. And what I wanted to do is kind of break the mold a little bit. One thing that people really enjoyed is that I called the approach to cooking in it descriptive as opposed to prescriptive. So what that means is there's a recipe for leafy greens. You could use 30 different kinds of leafy greens. Okay, so you could use chard from a garden, you could use spinach from a garden, you could use wild lamb's quarters, or you could use nettles. So there's many, many recipes in the book. Like the first recipe in the book, wild green cakes, I don't think I have ever made it with the same exact blend of greens. And that's what I wanted to empower people to say, like, hey, you don't necessarily need to have amaranth for this, but if you do have amaranth, there is a super traditional Jamaican dish that you can make called callaloo. So, there's going to be like side notes about, the specific culinary traditions, because traditions are also looking at the traditions of cooking wild plants around the world is one of the best ways to look at cooking, to learn about cooking specific varieties like purslane. I'm going to be talking about purslane at a speech I'm giving tomorrow. And for that, it's eaten in the Mediterranean, but the most robust culinary tradition that I know of is from Latin America.
Hmm.
So we can look at Latin American recipes, and because the green can be a little bit tricky to cook with because it's a little bit tart, it can have kind of a funky flavor if you just like eat a bowl of it or if you don't blanch it. But in, say, Mexico, they might make something called a guisado, which is going to be like a stew of greens, and they're going to add garlic, onion, concassé tomatoes, peeled seeded tomatoes, a little bit of chili flake or guajillo chili puree, and they're going to stew that. So, or they might use a combination of greens. So they're going to add different things that are going to, complement the flavor of the specific greens, and make it more palatable to people that have never had it before. So looking at traditions is a big part of that book. And I really went down the rabbit hole with some of them. I mean, I think one of my favorites is there's an entire festival dedicated to it in Tuscany. It's called La Minestrella Gallicano. And there's like not an exact recipe, but what you see is a range of amount of ingredients that people will use. And it's like anywhere from like 50 to 70 different individual species of plants that go into this soup. So again, it's kind of open-ended, but only like the old matriarchs in the town, the old women know like which plants to go and pick. And an interesting thing is, they might pick a small amount of some plants that are technically like you shouldn't eat like large amounts of them, but they're using them in such small amounts. It's poverty food. It's stuff that came out of people, the necessity of people needing food and having lots of wild plants around, maybe not a lot of meat. So it's basically a stew of greens with a particular type of bean, and then these kind of unleavened corn cakes that they make by pressing them between two red hot irons, and then you like scoop the soup up with that.
Oh my! And that recipe's in the book.
Yeah,
Nice, dude. I'm excited about that one. That one's really cool. Just flipping through, I found your milkweed.
yeah.
I guess that is a third plant that I know. I know milkweed. So yes, I have tried a milkweed pod. I don't know. It wasn't bad. I just ate it raw. I hope that's okay. I'm still alive.
Yeah, so yeah, you should never eat it raw.
Okay.
Yeah, they have stuff called glycosides, and yeah, if you eat a bunch of milkweed raw, it's not going to taste. I mean, you could have like a bite or something, and it's going to be tolerable, but that'll make you real sick real fast.
Yeah.
And some people have an intolerance where even if they cook the milkweed pods, they're still going to get sick. Or
Ugh.
if you overeat and you eat too many of them, you can get sick. So it's like the other thing about foraging is that like every single plant, every single mushroom, every single herb, every single tuber, everything is an individual research project that you get to learn about. And individual sensitivities and allergies and, not wanting to make people sick is a big part of that. And I'm a little unique in that, for a number of years now, I have been serving wild plants to the general public, at least 200 to 300 people a year. So that kind of that higher level of learning is pretty important because I've only made one person sick.
Okay, that's impressive. Yeah. I know my buddy Mitch. He's got he knows his tolerance to morels, and I forget what he said. It's probably like 2 handfuls. He's got big hands, but
exactly. Morels that's one thing where if you eat too many, I mean, they are Minnesota's state mushroom. They're also very toxic raw. And we actually had people in Montana. There was 2 fatalities 2 years ago
really?
because a sushi restaurant was putting undercooked morels on sushi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but there's like 30 to 40 people got very, very sick. So they're a state mushroom in Minnesota. They're also toxic raw, and they're delicious. And
I don't find enough to get in any kind of trouble with morels.
And some people just can't eat them at all. Some people develop an intolerance as they age, as allergies. And I don't like to use the word allergy because it insinuates a histamine response. But you can develop that as you age, and you can wake up one day and not be able to eat them anymore. Then there's probably 18 different species of morel in North America. Now we have differences in between individual species that might be sold together, and you might not be able to tell the difference And you might
Yeah.
not be able to tell the difference if you're just looking at these mushrooms side by side.
Hmm.
So my favorite example is there is an alcohol intolerance or alcohol allergy with it should be, I think it's Morchella septentrionalis. It's a black morel that grows up in like young aspen stands in northern Minnesota, and it does not. I don't see it being harvested anywhere else. Because black morels, they're a type of black morel. Black morels are also the most commercially sold morel, and they come out of the Pacific Northwest. But this individual species of black morel from northern Minnesota, I would say probably 20% of the people that I have seen eat it will have immediate emesis. Like they will start puking immediately after
Really?
they eat it if they are drinking alcohol at the same time that they ingest it. If they are not drinking alcohol, they're totally fine. And unlike
Weird.
other intolerances where people will get sick and that'll be extended, like you're on the toilet all night crawling on the floor, most of the people at the event that I was at, this was my first mushroom event, they just kept drinking after they puked and they had no more problems.
Oh, jeez.
So it's like everything is like a complete rabbit hole, wormhole to go down and learn about.
Yeah. Well, I'm pumped to read. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to be reading a lot before I start cooking again. And I'll definitely cook the milkweed pods here in the future.
Yeah, and it's good to eat. You can blanch them and then you cook them, and that's kind of like an extra added safeguard. It's not going to take away from the flavor or anything. But yeah, and it's really only like common milkweed, and it's a Asclepius. Oh man, what is it? I can't even remember right now. Asclepius speciosa, like I think it should be showy milkweed, and then your common milkweed are two that you can eat. And other than that, like most of the other milkweeds, with the exception of one that's not even really worth mentioning because there's not a lot of it, is most of them will make you really, really sick, cooked or not.
Yeesh. Yeah, I believe I had the common in my yard at our last house, and I left them growing, and they spread like crazy, and it was cool. I was hoping the monarchs would find them, but they preferred like the butterfly weed that my neighbor planted,
which is a type of milkweed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't try to eat that one. I just tried the pods.
No, I had a line cook who was trying to impress me, and he's like, "Chef, look, I got this butterfly milkweed." Oh, he got so sick.
Oh, no.
So sick. Yeah. So your type. No, make sure you know exactly what type of milkweed. Oh, Asclepius syriaca, common milkweed. Common milkweed is the best bet, and that's the one that I typically eat. And all of it needs to be cooked except the flowers. I will use the flowers raw as a garnish, but the amount that you're eating is so minuscule that I have never had a problem. I've been serving milkweed flowers for 8 or 9 years, and I've never had an issue because it's just a sprinkle.
Yeah, super cool. Are there any other plants that we should put on our radar? Like, especially we're approaching spring now. A lot of our network listeners are going to be out turkey hunting. So outside of ramps, morels, I don't think we'll find milkweed, at least pods, this time of year.
No. I mean, in late spring, you're going to get the shoots, which you can harvest the shoots, and milkweed will continue to grow. You're just going to have shorter milkweed. Like a lot of people will say, like, "Oh, you're killing the monarchs." Like, well, actually, the plant is just going to be a little bit shorter, and you could harvest from it multiple times. You're just going to have like a very short milkweed. It's still going to go to seed, and the plant they reproduce by rhizome and seed. So even if you cut the plants off, they're still going to be going under the ground, and you're still going to be producing more milkweed for you and for the monarchs. But for plants, the biggest one I think that we didn't mention here is nettles. So I mean, nettles are like ubiquitous. They are everywhere, and they're a weed. I grow them on the side of my house so that I am never without, because they are one of the most delicious plants of all time. I mean, I think the best story I have about them is like the most expensive dinner I ever cooked. I was charging $1,000 a person, and I had truffles, foie gras, caviar, all kinds of stuff on this menu. Take a wild guess. What, hands down, the favorite dish on the whole menu was nettle soup.
Really?
Hands down. Not even there's like a life lesson in there somewhere for me. But yeah, what happens is the nettles, and we have a couple different types. We have wood nettles here as well as stinging nettles, and they taste completely different. So
Okay.
wood nettles taste like if you steam them. So a lot of people blanch nettles, and you do not have to blanch them. You can, I mean, shoot, you can even eat them raw. I fed them to some TV anchors raw last year, so it's kind of an old forager parlor trick. They have they have a trichome that's basically like a crystal stinger. So the different ways that you can make the nettles edible without stinging your mouth is you can break them just by crushing them in your hand, and you can just like eat them like that, or you can dry them, or you can boil them, or you can cook them, or you can steam them. So just cooking them or crushing those the trichomes in some way is going to make the nettles not sting, and it's going to make them palatable. Someone from Istanbul actually sent me a recipe, which is a raw nettle salad.
Hmm.
And they take the nettles, they crush them with a rolling pin, then they slice them up and they toss them with like feta cheese, olive oil, olives, and chopped tomatoes, and they call it a salad. And you're eating a salad of raw nettles. But
Yes.
nettle soup, I mean, my dad is a conventional corn and soybean farmer. Like he's been battling weeds his entire life. Every spring now, he makes nettle soup,
Nice.
and he's going to start growing amaranth. Yeah, the nettles are crazy. They have this like saline flavor. I don't want to call it fishy because I don't really like the term fishy, especially when we're not talking about fish. But it is like an aquatic, oceanic, addictive,
Really?
awesome flavor. But you get that really from pureeing them. When you puree them into a soup, it is like there's nothing like a bowl of pureed nettle soup in the spring. Or I think my favorite thing to do, take your nettles and you want to harvest them, you eat the whole thing, you're not picking leaves off. Pick half a grocery bag of them and get a steamer pot. So a pot with a steamer insert, and instead of blanching them in boiling water, like you look at the water after you blanch something, it's going to be so dark. There's a lot of nutrients and flavor that goes into that. And sometimes that's okay. But with nettles, it really takes a lot of the flavor out of them. So for the most potent nettle flavor and to like retain the most nutrients, I steam them.
Okay.
And I tell you, you steam them for 5 minutes or a little bit less, depending on how old they are, and you put a little bit of butter on them at the table and a pinch of salt. It is just the food of the gods, man. I mean, steamed nettles, and you're going to
Nice.
taste more of that kind of oceanic taste with them. With the wood nettles, when you steam them, the flavor is so strong. It's a perfume. It's like if you ate a mouthful of apple blossoms,
Oh, jeez.
and the flavor is so strong that some people will not like them if they are steamed instead of blanched. So again, like two different types of nettles, two completely different flavors, but they can both be cooked the same. The wood nettles are a little bit different as they're indigenous and they come up like a little bit later, and they also have like a shoot stage, so you can harvest the shoots and get like this little green vegetable, tender little like asparagus with a nettle on the top. But yeah, I mean, nettles are just an incredible plant. I mean, they're a textile crop. They're an oil crop from the seeds. The seeds you can harvest throughout the year. Nettle tea, probably the best tea that I've ever had.
Okay.
And you can make it with the fresh plants. I have a recipe and a video on my site. You take the fresh plants or the dried plants and you boil them. Like you boil these things for like 5 minutes and you put fresh mint sprigs. And then you sweeten that with maple syrup.
Oh, dude.
Unbelievably good. It's like the best iced tea or hot tea. It's so good. So good.
To make a hot toddy out of that when you're feeling kind of sick. There you go. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to find some nettles. I mean, that all just sounds awesome. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of picturing like, if turkey season's successful, having like some smoked turkey breast and then that nettle soup side by side, I think would be rock star. I think that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah, they go hand in hand. It's a spring. They're just like, I mean, for me, nettles are like the quintessential like spring green, and they're easy to identify.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just great.
I think the ramp people might fight you on the essential spring green, but we'll let them pipe up in the comments and
Yeah, I mean, ramps
they're
are
gonna
good
write
too.
in.
Ramps are good too.
Yeah, I only know ramps just because of Jason Michael Thomas. He had a phenomenal ramp butter that he made, and I thought, well, what the heck? Like I can find my own, and I can go make my own. Just like you were talking about the truffle oil. Jason's turned out a lot better, but it turns out like I don't think I picked enough. Like I left the like the tuber in the ground. So I think I just grabbed the leaves and I was out turkey hunting, so I was a little bit too anxious to get onto the next spot.
Well, next time you pick some, try the ramp butter in my book.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people swear by that. It is like the exact recipe, just scaled down and tested, that I used to serve in my kitchens.
Nice. I'll do that because I'm 100% going back to that hill was just covered in ramps. So
and also, if you guys like to ferment stuff, there's a Siberian tradition that's also in my book. It's called cheremsha or cheremsha, and it's basically just lacto fermented ramp leaves. It is the strongest smelling thing that I have ever smelled. I was banned from keeping it in the house.
Oh,
I mean, it's like weaponized garlic. It's unbelievably powerful. So
that's going to get me in trouble here.
Yeah, well, so what you do, you just take the leaves, you put them in a vacuum bag with salt, or you can do it in a jar and mush them up like sauerkraut. I just toss the leaves in a vacuum bag with salt, and then like maybe 2% by weight, and then vacuum seal them, and you just throw them on the counter. And I have forgotten about bags for multiple years. They're perfect. They're perfectly fine, and they also, all the juice comes out, and you have fermented ramp brine you can add to sauces and stuff like that. And I was wondering about this. I was like, how can I package this flavor so people can try it? 'Cause it's like, it's unbelievable. I mean, what I did was I made it into, I call it ramp steak sauce. So you take all these fermented leaves, you buzz them up with a bunch of peppercorns and some allspice, and I'm telling you, this stuff is so good. I got images. Someone sent me pictures of them putting the ramp sauce on their chest. Is a woman in my email. They're so good. Yeah, it's that good.
That's phenomenal. Well, that one I can definitely do. I don't know about the whole fermenting. I don't know how long that's gonna last in my house. But I might have to send it home with Andy, and he can ferment
Just keep it in the garage.
Yeah, we'll do that. There you go. Well, Alan, we could talk for, like, we could dedicate a whole podcast to nothing but foraging. I kind of want to dip into your future projects. You've mentioned a couple other books in the works. Do you want to introduce some of those topics?
Yeah, so within a week, I'll probably be signing the contract on my second book. So that's fauna. That's going to be like the meat portion of my life, and I'm still kind of kicking around with exactly how it's going to be organized and stuff like that. But one thing I know is it's going to have a robust offal section, because I love cooking with organ meats. I trained as a butcher at one of the places I worked at. We only used whole animals, and then I've worked with a lamb and goat farm in Wisconsin for about 10 years now, and they would actually give me every year some sheep to raise, and then we would butcher them on the farm along with, rabbits, pigs, chickens, like everything. So I have, intimate knowledge of putting stuff on a plate, as well as, cutting the animal's throat, putting a bowl down to save the blood, making blood sausage, and every other thing.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know a lot of our listeners are hunters, and we always, we don't want to waste anything at all. And I think a big challenge for us is just, well, number one, it's kind of icky. Number two, there is some odors involved with a lot of these things. But number three is like, a lot of people don't know how to use internal organs. I would say, yeah, we keep the heart, because that's easy. It's fairly, it's simple. Like, it doesn't have a weird odor. Like something like the liver. I'm still trying to find an awesome way to use liver. And I'm taking baby steps here and there. So if you have recommendations as far as that goes, kidneys, I've never even attempted a kidney. So if you've got tips, like, we're here for them.
Oh yeah. So where should I start? Well, like the easiest things to start off with are like the more mild offal, and of course with venison there's some caveats, right? So one of my favorite pieces of offal may not even be an internal organ. So there's all kinds of different parts. Like, right. Some people would call neck offal. But a
In the
head,
freezer, in the fridge right now, I've got the best. What would be what I would tell people who didn't want to know that it's neck, that it's pulled pork, but it's
it's so good.
barbecue pulled. It's a slow cooked
Yep.
forever, pulled off the bone. Every bone came out, and it is the best tacos, the best pulled pork you've ever had in your life. And exactly, it gets left in the woods or left on the table because they don't know what to do with it.
I would argue neck is probably better than backstrap if you do it right.
And
Agreed.
you know, everyone likes backstrap, right? And it's always going to be tender. It doesn't take much. It takes a lot more skill to cook with offal and to cook with something like a neck. And you know, that's the challenge. Like that's part of the fun is like, especially with offal, like, and especially with like charcuterie, where hey, we can take this thing, we can take a pig head, and I can make this. I'll call it a pork terrine. Depending on what I think the audience can take, I may call it head cheese, but it looks like a stained glass window of pork. And I mean, to make some of these things is like it takes cooking organ meats and turns it into like an art form. And you know, it's great. I can't wait to remake my head cheese here. But some of the things to start off with, you know, obviously you're not going to be cooking a venison head, but a lamb or a goat head are one of my favorite pieces of offal because you can fit them in a small stock pot at home. You can't do that with a pig head, right? And a pig head, depending on where you get it, it may be skinned. Even if it's not skinned, it's way more fatty. And that is going to flavor your broth. You're going to want to, you know, that's why people will make like, you know, pozole. It's got chilies and stuff in the broth that really makes it more flavorful. And it can kind of, you know, help to cover up some of that. But a lamb or a goat head, you know, they're going to be peeled here in the United States, and there's not a lot of fat on them, so it's basically just bone and meat. And it's one of my favorite ways if I'm going to make demi-glace at home, or if I just want to make stock that is going to really gelatinize and set and be just really good, nice cooking stock. I'm going to use the head. I'm just going to roast it and then put it in a crock pot, and it's so good, and they're cheap too. So lamb heads are great. Like I said, obviously we're not going to be cooking with venison heads, but other offal that are really, you know, more easily approachable are the ones with milder flavor. So you talked about heart. Heart is fantastic. I will tell you my favorite thing to do with venison heart is my friend Jesse makes these sandwiches at a restaurant I was at. We used to call them Little Charlies. I don't know where that came from. It's basically you take a slice of backstrap and then a slice of heart. You just take it and slice it into a round, and you grill both the pieces. You put them on a bun, like a little soft dollar bun, like little dollar sandwiches. Horseradish sour cream, caramelized onions, and that knocks it out of the park. It's so good. But the backstrap with the heart combined is fantastic.
Just the texture difference between those two cuts, I think would complement each other really well.
Yeah, because they're both tender when you don't overcook them. You just don't want to overcook heart. But you can also cook heart like low and slow. Like I have a recipe for making like corned venison heart, and you can kind of treat it like ham. I kind of prefer it just like cooked and not overcooked. But you can do all kinds of things with it. I used to cure bison hearts and make pastrami out of them and just like shave it nice and thin. Tongue is another really good one because tongue does not have a really aggressive flavor. There isn't gristle, you know, within it. It's one solid piece of muscle, and I will do all kinds of things with tongue. But one of my favorite ways to like get it in and like hide a little bit, you know, venison tongue is not very big, so if you cook them, they're so tiny. So you save them up, right? You cook them. I will do something like I'll call it Sunday gravy, and I'll take like a venison shank and maybe I'll smoke it, and then maybe I'll take a couple chicken legs, and then I'll put a couple tongues in there, and you cook the tongues until they're nice and tender, and you can put a skewer right through them. And tongues always need to be peeled, so you always want to peel that outer coating off. When I was in Costa Rica, I ordered some tongue. I was like, oh, I love tacos de lengua. Oh, and they had not been peeled. I'm like, oh man, that's a taste bud. Yeah, so always peel your tongues. One of my favorite things to make with them is pickled tongues, actually. And when Al Franken used to come into the restaurant I was at, he would order it specifically. He just loved the pickled tongue. So you cure them, you put them in a brine, and then after that you'll cook them you'll simmer them with vegetables, kind of like corned beef, peel them, and then you let them sit in that flavored brine. You let them sit 'cause it's pretty salty, and then after a couple days they'll be totally cured through, and it's like eating ham. It's
Oh
or
my
like
God.
prosciutto or something like that. It's super good, like nice thin slices. If you don't tell people that it's tongue, like nobody is gonna know.
Is that like with a beef tongue specifically, or
Any tongue.
anything?
I've lamb tongues, goat tongues, pig
Gotcha.
tongues. I opened up the menu with pickled bison tongue at my first restaurant.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm just big experience like that. I think a lot about this too, about utilizing the offal is just having some of the people, maybe even if you've hunted for a long time, the harvesting of those can sometimes be outside of your norm.
It's
Especially
definitely outside the
depending on
norm. Yeah.
that's the part of it that I think people have to, once you get past that. I think it's one of those things like anything else. The first time you've ever field dressed a deer, that was rough, and now you're better at it. Same thing, I think, with things like this. The first time you've harvested tongue, it's weird, and then it gets less weird the more you do it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Tongue is truly beautiful. Like if you haven't tried that, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean tacos de lengua. They make fantastic tacos.
Yeah.
You simmer them in like a little spicy salsa, guajillo chili sauce. So good.
Yeah.
Another
Maddie
good one-
Matheson has an amazing tongue recipe.
Yeah, Maddie.
And I'm excited to get your next book, Alan. Yeah, when that comes out, to see what you guys do with some tongue.
Yeah, no, and another good one is caul fat. So
Yeah.
that's the fatty
I
lining.
tried to do
And
something with caul fat. Was it you or Colton? One of you two tried to do something with the caul fat or kept it. And
I saved it once, and it was just I think I stored it. I froze it instantly, and I think that was a bad idea. But I think I needed to soak it.
You want to freeze it. You want to freeze it right away because caul
Okay.
fat it's got a shorter shelf life than other fats. So you want to freeze that stuff right away. Put it in a vacuum bag, vacuum seal it, throw it in the freezer. It's going to be good for a long time in the freezer. But if you leave it out in the fridge, I mean, you have like 2-3 days, and then
Okay.
it's totally gone.
Maybe it just got some stuff on it. It just wasn't. It was a little too funky for me when I opened it up out of the freezer. So
Yeah, and usually I'm cooking with lamb and goat caul, which is really, really similar to venison caul.
Okay.
Pork caul is much different. It's much finer, and because the fat has a much lower melting point, you're not going to get that chapstick effect. But still, take a meatloaf, wrap the meatloaf in caul fat. It's all going to melt, and then you can take spoon the fat off. It's super good.
yeah. So the chapstick effect. Are you referring to like just like venison tallow and how it kind of like the lower melting point?
Yeah,
Or is
I'm referring to the higher melting point that venison and beef and bison and lamb and goat will all have, and how that's very, very different when we're talking about animal fats. And rendering animal fats is another thing that I do a lot of. So at the place where I spent most of my formative years, every animal was cooked in its own fat. Okay, we're cooking goose. The goose is cooked in goose fat. Then the rice for the dish is cooked in goose stock. So it's like that's one thing you can do to really be intentional about building flavors, but you want to take that melting point of the fat into account because you're basically going to use venison fat for roasting potatoes or searing something, and then you're not going to eat it. And with like something like roasted potatoes, you eat them while they are hot because otherwise you're going to get that chapstick effect because of that high melting point.
Yeah. We had a butcher. My uncle gave us some venison growing up, and the butcher ground up all the fat in with the meat, and we didn't know it. And so we just made some chili or whatnot, and we were eating it, and all of a sudden it's like our mouth's just coated with solidified fat. And it's like, it's not, it doesn't taste bad, but it's just like, it's a weird, unpleasant feeling to have that fat solidify in your mouth. So yeah, be careful with that. Yes. Let's go on. Let me go back to the deer heads real quick. You said you wouldn't necessarily recommend making stock out of a deer head. Is that?
Well, just because of CWD, I usually don't cut through the spine, and
Sure.
Maybe I'll take some cheeks, but I mean that it takes time to peel the head too. So
Yeah.
I don't usually even take those. They're so small. So I mean, I don't cook with that. I don't cook with venison heads.
Okay. Right now, as far as I'm aware, Central Indiana does not have much. I think down south we have a couple cases popping up. But here in Central, I think we might be safe. Any listeners want to comment in and write in about that? But
I am not an expert. I mean, my friend Hank Shaw is. He lives in St. Paul too, but it is everywhere where I am. Like it's everywhere. So I just basically treat everything like it has it.
Gotta be cautious. Yeah, absolutely.
But one thing you can make, the best way to make, my favorite way to make venison stock is I actually use the feet.
Okay.
Yep. So I take the trotters out of the deer. So what you do is you just cut that off, like basically at what I call the kneecap, and then peel them. They peel relatively easy. It is going to look like there is absolutely nothing on the bone. Like it doesn't look, it just looks like this is only bone. But what there is, there's tendons, there's connective tissue, and there's actually enough to make something out of. So I use the analogy of pork trotters here. I also scrub those hooves, like I scrub the daylights out of the hooves.
Yeah.
But then I'll take these venison feet. I will, use a saw and I'll cut them into, manageable pieces that'll fit in a crock pot. And then I'll put them on the smoker and I smoke them until they're nice and caramelized. And then I make stock with it. It's the only way that I have been able to get venison stock to gel without reducing it, just by naturally cooking it. And I always use a crock pot. It's something about the heat or the way that the ceramic liner holds in heat, and combined with the length of time, because you're probably cooking it for like at least 24 hours ideally. But that's the only way I've gotten venison stock to gel, and it doesn't taste gamey or anything like that. But then after the venison trotters are cooked, you take them out of the stock. All this connective tissue and tendons, it's not like gristly stuff. It is like the meat that is on a pork pig foot.
Really?
Yes. And there's actually pig foot recipes where you cook them in an acidic solution so that it softens the bones and you eat them with the gelatinous pig foot.
Just eat the bones?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it gets kind of wild in Europe. But I'll take all those tendons and I mince them up, and basically you get like this like finely chopped kind of like collagen rich paste that will be rock hard when it's refrigerated. So we used to do this with pig feet, and you see this at like crazy fancy French restaurants. It's called a chromescuit. And I take this block of chopped venison foot meat, and I cut it into a little cube because it's rock hard when it's refrigerated, and then I bread that and deep fry it, and it's like creamy and like almost like cheesy on the inside.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, not everyone is going to do that, but sometime scrub the feet and try making stock from them, because it's the best venison stock that I have made for sure.
That 100% has my attention. Like that sounds good to me. I don't know why, but I want to try it real bad.
I have vivid pictures of Chris chopping off the end of the foot and just literally throwing it over his shoulder into the woods. So
most people do,
Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea you could do that. I mean, I knew you could make stock, but I had no idea it was like that level of intensity. Good. So you keep the hooves on? Because I have seen a couple people talking about like there's some way to like pry them off.
I scrub them, and I'll tell you why I keep the hooves on. This was inspired by talking with one of my friends. She's indigenous, and they were talking about bison hoof soup, and I was like, that sounds gnarly. I probably need to try. I wish I need to try that, but I don't know where I'm going to get a bison hoof. So I'd use the venison trotters, and when you scrub them so like they're perfectly clean, inside of the hoof, when you it'll come right off of the foot. There's a single piece of meat inside each of like the little black hooves.
Yeah.
And it's like half meat and half fat. Mm-hmm. And it's actually, I call it the oyster, and it is actually really good. The bison hooves, looking at the soup, it's like when they do that with the bison hoof, like you could like stir it like a soup, and they'll put that in there. So I mean, the bison hoof is like way more of that, but there's like a single piece of meat inside of the venison foot that's actually really good.
Yeah. So you just pick that out and eat it straight out
of
the stock.
For all you at home, Google that.
Yeah, it's like
this. It looks weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the oyster on the back of a roast chicken.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That is exactly
that's wild. I'm 100% gonna try that. And listeners, 100%, you better try this as well because it sounds awesome.
I'm gonna see how yours goes, buddy.
Come on, it's stock. Like everyone needs better stock, and it's just like it's game changing. Like when you get a stock that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I
like,
just drink it. Like I like a little bit of lemon, like maybe a little bit of like espelette pepper or just fresh cracked black pepper, a little bit of olive oil, and a pinch of some flaky salt, and I just drink it. Oh, it is like the best bone broth. I just love it.
Good for you too. Yeah.
Oh my word, yeah. I got to get that collagen. 100%.
Yeah,
that's gonna help.
So we should talk about liver here real quick because
Yes,
liver
please.
is one of the most. That's the most accessible organ meat. With venison, it can be really strong. It can also really be strong with poultry, like duck livers. When you get a liver that's strong, they can be really bitter. Especially a lot of duck livers are just like notorious for being bitter. But one thing you can do, a lot of people will say, hey, you soak the liver in milk or something before you cook with it, and that helps. So what that does is, think about like the surface area of the liver, and like it's got all this like super strong flavor in it. When you're soaking it in something, some of that is going into the milk, and you're going to discard that. So what you can do, I did experiments with lamb, goat, and venison a number of years ago. You can kind of dial in the flavor and the intensity to your taste. So what you can do is not just soak the liver for one night. You can soak it multiple times, and you can keep refreshing that. And you don't have to use milk. You could just do it with water.
Yeah.
So it's going to kind of dilute the flavor a little bit more, but that could be a good,
like a brine, right? Like we like goose meat's the one that we always talk about on this podcast a lot because goose meat often gets a bad rap because it's gross or whatever. And it's because you haven't, like, if you don't prep it properly, you don't brine it, it's going to taste like it's going to be gross. You're pulling that stuff out is kind of what your thought is, right, Alan? Like what you're saying is you can do that multiple times to hit the profile that makes sense for what you're serving.
Yeah. So you just find the place where you like it. Like, hey, I like to soak mine twice. I do not soak it in a brine. I mean, a brine's going to add salt, right?
Right.
So
well, I'm saying as if I'm drawing a comparison for people who have used brines in the past. Like essentially what you're doing is you're using that liquid to extract some of the intensity flavor of that flavor out, which in a brine's case is using salt to pull out the blood. Those types of flavors. They're just trying to liken it to like that process. It seems similar to that as far as pulling out the flavors. Now, is the milk, by putting it in the milk and not like a brine, like using salt, does it go the other way? Is it like putting flavor into the liver then? Or
with milk, yes.
Okay.
And it just kind of softens it. Dairy has an affinity for liver. It's a little hard to describe, but yeah, it kind of calms it down a little bit. And just dairy and milk are great with liver. But then kind of getting back to the soaking, a lot of people just soak it whole. So when I said think about surface area a little bit, what happens if say you cut the venison liver into pieces and then you soak it? Okay, now you only need to soak it once because you have exposed so much more surface area. All these water soluble flavors and compounds are going to go out at an accelerated rate because there's more of the surface area that has been exposed to liquid. So that's another trick that you can do. And another thing is, like liver pate. I love liver pate. There are good venison liver pates, and there's like not so good. You want to soak it. You want to calm that flavor down a little bit, and that will vary on your harvest and by the animal, with age. But one thing that I learned, like one of my tricks for making a great pate is we always add fruit, and that fruit is apples. Yep. So the chef from Rome, two chefs I worked for from Rome, both of them, they put apples in with their pate. So what you do, you take your liver, it's cut into pieces, you dry them off, you brown the heck out of them in a pan, then you take them out, and now you add apples and onions. And now you're cooking those down until they're nice and soft, and now you're going to puree it up. And we want the flavor a little bit more mild. Add some more apples and onions. So again, we're dialing, we're tweaking and kind of A/B testing and dialing the flavor of the liver to really where we would like it to be. And kidneys are very similar. Piss filters, which they are better than they sound. I swear to God, they're better than they sound.
It's better than it sounds.
Yeah, and brining is something I do with kidneys. I don't soak them multiple times. I don't think
Okay.
it's really necessary, but a great thing to do with them. It's so good. Like people will not even know that it is a kidney. I mean, most people haven't even had kidneys. Um,
Right.
I'll soak them if I'm going to put them in something like steak and kidney pie, which is a fantastic way to use kidneys because you got
Nice.
pieces of pot roast and then little tiny pieces of kidney where, unlike liver, you can cook kidneys like you would pot roast and they're not going to get tough.
Okay.
They're just going to kind of melt in there and do their own thing and they're going to stay nice and tender. They're not going to get grainy like a liver will. So that is a really big difference between livers and kidneys. So my favorite thing to do with kidneys, besides steak and kidney pie, is I put them in a brine. Like I make a nice little brine, let them soak overnight, and then I put them in the smoker.
Mm.
And once they're smoked, I just do it like boom, right to 150. Take them out, let them cool. They're all burnished and like mahogany colored from the smoke. You cut them into paper thin slices. It's just like eating ham. It's fantastic, and it's like not a really strong like iron taste like liver. I really liked smoked venison kidneys.
I'll be honest. Like I think I've looked for the kidney, not hard, but like I can't recall ever just seeing like, oh, there's the kidney when I've processed a deer. So I'm gonna have to pay more attention.
Well, yeah, we have to look harder next time. Maybe actually be a little bit more gentle when we do that tug and pull everything out of it and make sure we put it over somewhere nice.
So my goals moving forward, and unfortunately we're danger close on time. Like Alan, this has just flown by. I need to bring a tarp, and I just need to process more carefully. So I need the tarp to better preserve that caul fat. 100%. Yeah, getting the liver. Like if you just flop stuff out on the dirt, yeah, you can wash it off, but it's the caul fat. You're never going to rescue that. So you want to keep it clean. And 100%. Like I need to try and find the kidneys because like that sounds awesome. Like steak and kidney pie. Like I'm sure I've had that at some point. Like I've been to Europe and I've eaten pub food, so I'm sure I've had it. So it just sounds awesome. Yeah, I need to keep more, try more.
Yeah, and another great thing to look at. I mean, everything is like a learned skill here. And offal even more than like just straight butchering a deer like most people do. It's a learned skill. It takes time. It takes practice. You might have a couple failures, but charcuterie. This is like one of the time-honored ways of using offal, and a great one to start out with that anyone can make is Scrapple.
Okay.
So this is like a mid-Atlantic thing, and it's you can see right where it came from. It came from necessity. You can take like whatever organs you want. Some recipes use a pig head, and I'm gonna take. You could just make it with livers, and I'm gonna soak them, and then I'm gonna puree them up, and then I'm gonna brown. I'm going to brown it, or you could brown them and then puree the chunks, and then you mix that with after it's cooked, and I'll put a shank in there too, and like cook that so it's got some collagen in the liquid. So it's usually a mixture of some offal and some meat, and then we're gonna put that through a meat grinder and make this paste, and then you take that organ and shank paste, and then you mix that into the stock, and then you're going to add buckwheat flour and cornmeal and spices, and you cook this mixture until it gets super thick like polenta. You put it into a loaf pan, and now you have a percentage of liver that is a lot smaller than just like eating a big piece of liver. And the way that you eat it, you fry these slices. The starch comes out from the corn and the buckwheat, so you fry these slices until they're just like rock hard, crispy, golden brown, and you have them for breakfast with bacon and maple syrup.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm telling you, it's got a cult following. I mean, you can look it up. It's fantastic. But that's a great thing. That's a great recipe that's like super variable and is, a really approachable way to cooking with organ meats, but liver specifically.
Yeah, 100%. So I do have a recipe from Chris Ely. He runs Smoking Goose here in Indianapolis, like an awesome charcuterie. What would you call it, Andy? Just like what is Smoking Goose? Like, what do you call it? It's a butcheries.
Well,
it's a sausage.
Yeah, it's like
place.
a deliria, like classic deli. But I mean, I don't know. I just bought eggs there, and chicken breast too. There's a whole butcher shop too associated next to it.
You'll have to Google it, Alan, and
Cool
it's they got tons of cool meats.
Go there, get the T-shirt. It's worth
it. Chris gave me this recipe to do the sausage with, and it requires a ton of liver. So I've been kind of saving some back for that, but I like the ideas you're giving me here. So I'm gonna have to...
and making sausage like boudin. That's a French liver sausage. So again, they're combining the organ meats that are ground with a starch. So liver sausage, like a classic one, like that I know it. Well, I mean, there's so many, but they might have oatmeal in them in Norway. Yeah. And then in Spain, they're probably going to have rice, and then it might be dry cured and fermented, and then it's called morcilla. But a lot of times they're going to be mixed with some kind of starch that's going to dilute it. And blood sausage is basically the exact same thing, but it's a milder flavor, if you can believe that.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think we have time to get into the blood sausage, but I'm real curious about that. You mentioned you've saved it in the past, so you're familiar. We might have to wait for your book if we can't get you on the show again for some blood sausage talk. But we'll wrapping it up here real quick. Can you tell us where we can find you? Outside of Amazon, everybody pop on and buy the foraging book he's got right now, Flora. Obviously, we'll put some links below. But where else can people find you right now?
Well, most people know me from my website. That's foragerchef.com. And I've been putting something new out to my email list every single Saturday for over 13 years now.
Oh, sick.
And then I'm on Instagram at foragerchef, and YouTube, same thing.
Nice. 100% go follow. Tons of cool stuff in the works. Is there an ETA for the next book?
I'm probably going to turn the manuscript in November.
Okay. So
early
2026 maybe.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Put that on your wish list. If it's as comprehensive as the Flora book, for a cookbook. I love what's going on here so far. Just flipping through. Super excited. Just from our talk tonight, I'm super excited to see what you're going to do with the fauna book, and I'm jacked. Yeah, I'm going to try that stock recipe for sure, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, maybe as a little teaser. Yeah. As a little teaser, one thing that I'm going to make in a couple weeks here is I take a Canadian goose and I pluck it like completely, but I pluck the neck, and then you take the neck and you take the bones out, take the spine out, and then you stuff the neck as a sausage casing.
Yes, I've seen people do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. That sounds awesome. Yeah. We're big goose fans here. Like we're not poo-pooing any kind of Canada goose talk. So, real quick, to end us off here, you've given us tons of recipes. So I don't think we need a recipe at the end. Just go back and re-listen to the episode. You've got probably 24 recipes here. Let's just buy the book. It's an awesome book. You're going to love it. But up here in the Offal Talk in your notes, you mentioned it's okay to be choosy. And I love that. But you also said don't give up on flavors. So if you don't like the liver this way, try it that way. If you don't like it soaked one day, soak it too. Mm-hmm. So I love that mentality. It's like, just keep trying things. Don't give up.
Yeah, give yourself a little grace and know that you may not nail it on the first try. That everything here is a learned skill, right?
But keep trying. Don't give up. Awesome. Alan, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really love the conversation. And 100% follow along, join the email list, check out his books, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.